So you think you want to start a handmade business. You've got dreams of doing what you love for a living, crafting things, and then selling them to people who love them and making lots of money out of this. And while that is a possibility, the truth is that it's very, very difficult to create a profitable and sustainable handmade business. So before you start, watch this video because I'm going to share with you all of the potential challenges that you might face when you decide to go ahead and start a handmade business, so that if you do go ahead and do it, you are forewarned and forearmed against these potential challenges so they don't come up and bite you with no warning. Now, before I get started, if you don't know who I am, my name is Jess I've been running my own successful online handmade jewelry business, Ethereal, since 2008, and I've been fully self-employed with that and other online businesses since 2010. So I've been doing this for a very long time. I've worked with thousands of makers over this time, helping them to start and grow their handmade businesses. I've seen these same challenges pop up over and over and over again. So I want to take the time in today's video to just give you an idea of the challenges you may face so that you can go into this with your eyes wide open, knowing that it's going to be hard. And by the end of this video, hopefully you will know for sure whether opening a handmade business is the right choice for you or not. Okay, the first challenge is sustaining passion for your work. When you start crafting as a business rather than just as a hobby, it can become challenging to maintain your passion for your work because you change your relationship with the things you're making. You're not just making for fun. You're not just making for yourself. You have to start making for someone else. You have to start thinking about, who's my ideal customer? Where can I find them? What are they going to like? What are they not going to like? All of these sorts of things mean that you have to start treating the thing you love as a business rather than just as a hobby that you're doing for fun and doing whatever the heck you want with it. Now, I'm not saying you can't just keep doing that, but what you will probably find is that over time, if you actually want to have a successful business, you're going to have to niche down. You're going to have to make a certain type of product or a certain style of product. You can't just keep making lots of different types of things and experimenting, because to have a business, you need to have a brand. You need to know what you're about so that your customers know what you're about. So maintaining your passion for the thing you make when there are constraints around it can be quite challenging for a lot of people. And also, if you're starting a business, you really need to be thinking long term. 5 years, 10 years, like how long do you think you can maintain this? How long do you think you're going to keep loving doing what you're doing in order to actually continue and push through and make this thing sustainable in the long term? So the next challenge is limited market demand. There might be limited demand for what you make. And if that is the case, there's going to be a smaller market available, versus mass-produced kind of generic products. This is especially true if you make quirky or really unusual or interesting products that are only going to appeal to a very narrow market. You have to then make sure that you're finding that market. And when there is limited market opportunity, it obviously makes it harder to find your customers and actually make profit off of your work. It may end up being really challenging to sustain enough sales to make a business work. The next one, of course, is cost. Do you have sufficient resources to buy all of the materials, the tools, and not only that, once you start selling, you have fees and charges, and you have to, pay for software and so on and so forth. I see this come up so often, especially in relation to like Etsy and people in Facebook groups whinging about how Etsy is so expensive. It's not expensive. The problem is that people in that situation haven't gone into business with eyes wide open, realizing that you have costs that you need to pay in order to sustain a business. You can't just get everything for free. You have to actually pay to use a tool like Etsy. And in that case, you need to step back and become a business person, look at the numbers, run the numbers, and make sure that you're charging enough to cover all your fees. And not only just the fees on Etsy, for example, but other fees and charges as well. Your taxes. You have to make sure that you can afford to do this. Now, I know a lot of you watching this video specifically probably are coming to this as a hobbyist. You probably already have like the tools and materials because you're already making it. But so it might be those other costs. Or, think about, well, do I need better tools? Do I need better materials? Do I need to scale up in some way that will cost me money? So you have to consider the costs of running a business versus just keeping it a hobby. The next challenge is time limitations. It takes a lot of time and energy to start a business. A lot. I don't think people realize how much goes into it, especially if you don't have any business background or any experience, especially if you're trying to sell online and you don't have any experience with the software and the tech stuff. It's a big learning curve especially in the first 1 or 2 years, and you're going to be spending a lot of time learning how to run a business. That's going to leave way less time for your craft. You're not going to be spending all this time making anymore. In fact, I tell my students, expect to spend something like 80% of your time on non-making stuff in the first 6 months to a year of building a business. No, I'm not joking. That is honestly what I think it will take if you want to be successful, because you know how to make. That's why you're thinking about making a business out of this, because you know how to make the thing. You already do that. You've got that skill. It's all the other stuff you need to spend time on. You need to learn about taxes and business laws. You need to learn about marketing. You need to learn about the tech side of things if you're selling online. You need to get your head around things like bookkeeping and record keeping. There's a lot of work. And if you have a limited amount of time or energy, maybe you've got a full-time job, maybe you've got a family, maybe you have health challenges, maybe you have all of these things, you're going to find it a big challenge to fit in running a business and growing a business amongst all of these other things. And again, people have this idea that you're just going to open an Etsy shop and it's all going to magically happen and you're going to start making sales and you're going to start making lots of money. That is not the reality. I'm just here to tell you right now, maybe 0.5% of people get lucky and they just open a shop and it suddenly takes off. For the vast majority of people, it will take you months, if not years, to get to the point where you're actually making a decent amount of money, if you ever get there at all. So you have to be realistic about the timeline and the time frame it's going to take you in order to get this thing up and running properly. Now, if that sounds scary and overwhelming, I do have resources that do help with that. My Setup Shop course, it's a 30-day course that helps you set up a stellar online shop for your handmade goods. We're currently running it at the moment. It will run again in September-ish 2023, and I run it twice a year. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link below. You can get on my email list and find out when that runs. I also have a membership, the Thriver Circle, in which I have a year-long course, Your Year to Thrive. It's 1 lesson a week, so it's very doable for people who are busy. And it'll take you through everything you need to know to start and grow a thriving and profitable handmade business. But you notice the course is a year long. There's a reason for that. It's because it will take you that long to start learning everything. I'm all about being honest and realistic with people about this. I'm not going to come along and tell you, oh, you're going to magically start a shop and it's going to be fantastic right from the beginning. You're going to make tons of money. You can eventually get to that point, but it takes time and it takes a lot of energy. And I just want you to, again, go into this with eyes wide open, knowing that that's the case and being realistic about the potential for profit in the long run. And this relates to my next point, which is limited business skills. Do you have any business experience? Do you have any skills selling, marketing, inventory managing, shipping and packing? Like all of these new skills that you're going to have to learn in order to actually run a business. If you don't have any of these skills, you have to learn all of these skills from scratch. If you do have some of them, that's great. You're going to be ahead of the curve compared to most people. So just consider this, customer service. Oh my gosh, dealing with customers. If you've never done this sort of stuff before, it's a lot to learn. The next problem is market saturation. Now, this is kind of the flip side of what I talked about before when I was talking about, what if there's a limited market demand for your product? What if you make something that 10 bazillion other people make? I make silver jewelry. Do you know how many other people make silver jewelry? A lot. So it's a hard niche to break into because the competition is so fierce. Okay, so you have to be aware of that. How are you going to stand out? How is your business different? How are your products different? Why would somebody choose your products over somebody else's? And this is where having, a specific niche within that, I call it your micro niche. I have a video on that. I'll put a link to that around here somewhere. Having something that makes your business stand out from the crowd. A big problem I see a lot of people fall into when they start is that I'm going to be blunt here, they make products that are very generic and very much like what everybody else makes, okay? And when you're doing that for fun, you go down to, this is how I started. I went down to my local Spotlight craft store, bought stuff off the shelves there, whacked some stuff together, and boom, I had jewelry. But it was the same stuff that so many other people were making, just, beaded earrings, beaded necklaces, whatever, with a pendant. It was nothing unique. It was nothing special. Sure, it's what started my business and I'll be forever thankful for that. But I very quickly realized I needed to put a bit more into it, and I pivoted in a different direction. I learned a bit of silversmithing skills, and then I started making stuff that was more unique. Now, of course, I have a very minimalist, simple style, so there are, of course, still plenty of people who make stuff similar to what I make, and that's okay. But you just have to be aware that the competition is out there. And I just want to make a point for those who say, oh, well, this is why I'm not selling on Etsy because the competition's too high. No matter where you sell, the competition will be there. If you're trying to sell on your own website, well, you're not going to get anybody just stumbling across it. You have to do all of the work to drive traffic there versus being someone like Etsy where they will drive traffic for you. You have to go to sell at markets. You have to approach shops to sell retail. There is always going to be competition. You can't let that stop you, but you have to be aware of it. And you have to think of that when you go into starting your business and go, okay, how much competition and saturation is there in the niche I want to sell in? And if there's a lot, how can you be different and stand out from the crowd? Okay, another challenge is seasonal or cyclical demand. Do you make a product that is seasonal? So beanies, for example, okay, people generally are probably going to only want to buy them when it's cold. They're not going to be thinking about it in the middle of summer. This is okay if you're going to be selling internationally and you can hit markets in the northern and southern hemisphere, then it's not going to matter quite so much. Same with me, I make a lot of wedding rings. That's a kind of, I won't say seasonal, although it kind of is, but it's a bit cyclical. Like more people get married at certain times of the year than others, so you're going to be busier at other times. Same with holidays, you're always going to be the busiest, generally speaking, leading up to Christmas. If you make stuff that is giftable, at least in the Western world, that may change depending on your culture and your demographics, whatever the big gift giving season is. Chances are you're going to be busier before that. So this means sales are going to fluctuate throughout the year. If you're in this sort of niche, these sort of niches, it's not going to be smooth sailing and the same all throughout the year. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to keep that in mind if you are trying to make a living out of this and actually make sure you have enough money coming in all year round. You might have to save a little bit more certain times of the year to cover other times of the year. So that is an important thing to be aware of. Okay, the next one is legal and regulatory and tax considerations. If you're starting a business, you need to do it properly and you need to be in accordance with all of the laws of the land of where you are, and unfortunately laws of other lands these days too, which makes things very complicated. There's a lot of countries out there now that actually require you to pay fees or collect taxes, even if you're not in the country. It can be a bit overwhelming. This is why a lot of people just stick to selling domestically. If you, again, are on a venue like Etsy, they generally will take care of this for you, or at least tell you what you need to do. Whereas when you're running your own website, you might be completely oblivious to a lot of this stuff. So that is something to consider. You actually have to make sure you're in accordance with those sorts of regulatory considerations to wherever you sell. And of course, in your own country, you need to make sure you're collecting the right taxes. You need to make sure you have the right paperwork, etc., etc. So you need to look into all of this stuff. Insurance, safety regulations. If you make stuff for kids, there's going to be laws and regulations about that. If you make bath and body products, there's going to be laws and regulations about that. You have to make sure that you're in accordance with those, and there might even be hoops you have to jump through in order to make what you want to make. So again, that is another hurdle that you're going to need to overcome in order to set up a business that is legal and in line with all of the regulations. Oh, and just an aside to this, because I see so many people making this mistake, don't use other people's intellectual property, their IP. Don't make Disney stuff. Don't make Star Wars stuff. Don't make things that belong to other people. You just can't do that, because you will probably eventually, especially those sorts of big, Star Wars is owned by Disney now, right? Especially those big, massive companies, they're always looking for people who are ripping off their IP and shutting them down. Make sure you are making unique, independent work that does not rely on the intellectual property of somebody else. So the next one is, what sort of life and lifestyle do you want for yourself? It's going to be, as I said, a lot of work to start and run a handmade business. Is it worth it? Is taking this thing you do for potentially for relaxation, for fun, for enjoyment, is it worth turning that into a business? Really, I want you to really think about this seriously, because I know I talked about this a bit earlier, but it will change your life. It'll change how much time you have with your family. It's going to change how much time you have to yourself. It does get easier, as you move through the process of developing and growing your business. You will get to the point where you know mostly how to run a business. You never stop learning. There's always more to learn. Everything's always changing, but you'll kind of have it figured out, right? But is it going to mess up the life that you have for yourself? Now, for me, it's actually the opposite. It gave me the lifestyle I wanted. And that might be the same thing for you. It might be that you're like, I have this job I hate, or, this situation I'm unhappy with, and turning my hobby into a business is actually going to improve my lifestyle. It's going to make me happier. It's going to give me more time working at home if I'm there with my kids or whatever. So this is a big consideration, is the impact it's going to have on your life in general and the lives of the people you love and live with as well. And the final one is risk of failure. What if it doesn't work? What are you going to do? So how are you going to feel about that? How much risk are you willing to take? How much are you willing to invest in this? How much time? How much money? Time is life. Every minute you spend on something is a minute you're not spending on something else. Are you willing to put the time into this? Is it going to be worthwhile? Is it going to be worthwhile to you in the long run to spend the time to grow this business? What is your vision? What is it you're wanting? What is it you're trying to achieve here? What is your goal with this? I think a lot of us just fall into starting a business because people are like, that's so nice, you should sell that, And then we just, we might go to a market, and then we might just like, well, sure, I'll just open a shop online. And, it's 6 months later and we've spent all this time and we're like not getting anywhere. And then we're like, why am I doing this? So really, I want you to really think about this. I want you to think about, if I do this, what is my vision? What is the vision of the future? What is my goal? How much money do I want to make? Like, be realistic about this. How much money am I going to be able to make from this? Is it worth the effort and the time and the work I'm going to be putting into it? A handmade business is, by definition, a limited income business because you can't really scale it. You can, in the fact you could hire people to do the making for you. You could outsource various elements of it. But at the end of the day, you're trading money for time, and there's only so much you can make doing that. And if you're happy about that and happy with that, and that's what you want to do, and you can make enough money from what you make to make it worthwhile, then go for it if that's what you want. But just be realistic. Just think through it before you start. Realize failure is a very big possibility. And if you're okay with that, then that's the right place to be. Because, if you're okay with not getting to the end point, but you're going to enjoy the journey and you're going to find it valuable, then that is worth doing. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video and you're like, wow, that's a lot to consider, but yes, I still want to do this, then I recommend you watch this video next, which is 25 essential tips on how to run a successful handmade business, and that will get you started. Thank you so much for being here. I will catch you in the next video. If you enjoyed this one, of course, give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my future videos on how to have a thriving and profitable handmade business. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.